This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Karen Cole from All Chicago, and welcome to your lunchtime webinar on the intent to renew. So thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to just dive right into the webinar, which we are recording. I just want a full disclosure. I'm doing this on my own, and sometimes I struggle with the technology, so please be patient with me. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Okay, so just some housekeeping for the webinar. Everybody's on mute right now. If you have trouble with the audio, please, join by phone if you're having difficulty on the computer. We do use the question or the chat box in order to have questions, so please use those boxes on the side of your screen for that purpose, and just again, please be patient with me as I go through those by myself. So again, sample of where the question box is in case you have a question. We will pause throughout the training to answer questions. Okay, I just wanted to introduce the team that's going to be working on the ITR in some capacity or another, and just make people aware of some changes that have happened in All Chicago. So Nicole Bahina is now our Vice President of Community Partnerships. Most of you should know me, Karen Cole, Director of CSV Programs. Jennifer Fabrini has been working with myself and the local evaluation committee on this project, and she has been promoted to a program manager, and she'll continue working with us. And below you will see the rest of the team, many of whom will be working on the intent to renew, either in reviewing or being a point of contact, or both. Unfortunately, we don't have the capability to have you introduce yourselves, but I'm going to do a poll in just 1 minute to see who's new. So overview of the training. Again, I structured this to not assume everybody is experienced, but so a quick overview of the local evaluation process, how it's used to determine funding, and then the intent to renew and its purpose, and how to successfully complete it on time. So someone asked if I have a PDF of the slides to share for note-taking. We don't. We will put them in the LMS afterwards, so sorry about that. We will try to do that in the future. I apologize. Okay, I just wanted to launch a quick poll just because it's helpful to me to understand who's new and who's not. If you could just answer the following poll about whether this is your first time working on the local evaluation process, including the intent to renew. We will have people take a couple minutes to vote, or a minute, I should say. Okay. Inching up to 100, so that's exciting. Okay. Okay, so we're at about 90%. It does look like most of you have done this before, though some of you are. Let me close and give you the results. How that happens. So most of you are. So most of you are experienced with this process, though some of you are relatively new. So, for those of you who are new, All Chicago is here to help assist you with this process at any point in time. So I did want to go over the local evaluation instrument process, because we have kind of evolved to have this be a process instead of just one aspect. So the context of this is that the local evaluation instrument is used as a tool to evaluate all projects funded through the COC program, how they're operating, and how they're doing on grant management. We do develop and update this process annually, and that is done by the local evaluation committee. Some of you who I know are on this webinar right now. So All Chicago, as a collaborative applicant, does administer the local evaluation process on behalf of the continuum of care. And this is a requirement of by HUD. So that's where the context of why we do this. How we determine what's in the local evaluation is really determined locally, first of all, by the board of directors, who many of you know have been setting system goals and monitoring them, approving policies and procedures we have, and then all of this is foundationally based on the HEARTH Act and our plan to end homelessness, our Plan 2.0. We also have a ranking committee, so HUD requires that neutral parties, those who aren't funded, develop policies in order to rank projects during our annual competition. So the project prioritization work group does that. And then we also use the local evaluation process to determine who receives monitoring throughout the year. So that's one of the selection criteria we have as a community. And then from the national perspective from HUD, every community has to do a local competitive competition for the NOFA, which is the Notice of Funding Availability. In case you're so new that you don't know all of our acronyms, because there's a lot of them. So HUD does release this NOFA every year, and it outlines the national priorities and how people can apply. And then one of the most important things to remember is that this is a competition, and then so we are unfortunately competing not only against other COCs, but also against each other in this process for funding. So less so with the intent to renew, but more so with the local evaluation. So we do use system performance measures to evaluate projects. These are less noted probably in the intent to renew, but we just want to make people aware of what we are looking at consistently on how we're doing as a system and how projects will help move things forward. Those of you who, I think it's always important to review the cycle as we have it. So the NOFA cycle is really a year-long process, and we're starting it right now in January, not only with this intent to renew, but also with the housing inventory count and the point-in-time count. For those of you who aren't aware, these are really the way that we report nationally the numbers that we have in the system. So the point-in-time count is when we actually go out and count people one hopefully cold night in January, see how many people are experiencing homelessness, and then the housing inventory count is the count of the number of beds and units in the whole homeless system. So it doesn't matter what funding source you have. So anyone working on any homelessness, we count their beds and units as part of the housing inventory count. So permanent supportive housing, rapid housing, shelters, transitional housing, all of it. Actually just released yesterday was the COC registration. So every year, continuums of care have to confirm who is going to be the collaborative applicant and who is going to submit the application. So we're working on that now. This is also the window now that many of you may have heard of the Unified Funding Agency. This is when that process occurs now as well. Also, the HMIS team is working on system performance measures. So those 6 things that were on the previous slide are the measures that they're gathering and will submit data to HUD on. Usually around April or May, we've been doing the grant inventory worksheet, and this is only for projects funded through the COC program, and this is where you make us and HUD aware of your number of beds and units and your general budget, so the allocation can be correct for the system and for each project for funding. This local evaluation process, hard to put, it should probably be closer to January, but this is the process for renewals in order to evaluate them, as I mentioned before. And it usually ends up to be finished around July. Probably not in July, but usually in late spring, we do the new projects process. So this is the process in order for current or future COC members to apply for funding to develop a new housing project. And then we've seen the last few years that HUD has released the NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability for the Continuum of Care projects in July, and I would anticipate that being the same timeline since HUD has said they anticipate giving us an awesome summer and releasing the NOFA in July. So the NOFA, for those of you who are not aware, it consists of 3 parts. So one is the project application submission. So everyone that we've deemed to move forward to renew submits a project application. All Chicago, in conjunction with the city and other stakeholders, work on the COC application. So this is the application of how the entire continuum is doing and how we're making progress on a lot of the metrics that I've mentioned before. That part is scored, and that score does influence who gets funded both for new and renewal projects. And then there's the ranking and review process. So we do, unfortunately, have to prioritize all projects based on the policy set by the project prioritization work group and rank them. So this is because we do have scarce resources, we have to develop policies on ranking projects. And then the last thing we do in our cycle before it starts all over again is the longitudinal systems analysis, or LSA. This used to be called the AHAR, and this is how we gather data to send to HUD, which they send to Congress so they can make appropriations decisions and budgetary decisions. So, again, with this overview, the COC application process is really a 2-part process. So one part is what we're doing now, the local evaluation instrument, and how we're looking at projects for compliance and how they're looking for performance. And this is our January to April process. So with appeals, it does take us way past April. And then the HUD application process. And so that's really dependent on the release of the NOFA, but we have found it happens in July. I wanted to go over the goals. So last year we did a lot of new things to this process, and this year we have decided to not do a lot of new things, but we are reaffirming the goals that we had in 2019 to be our 2020 goals. The goal of the local evaluation committee is continually to simplify this process, both for agencies and for All Chicago. We did find that this process was very burdensome in the past, and I think we've been making strides to make it less burdensome both for agencies and for All Chicago as the one reviewing the intent to renew and the local evaluation instrument. One of the big things is minimizing risk, right? So we want to ensure compliance with HUD and our priorities, and that projects are programmatically and fiscally sound, because we do not want HUD to decide to not fund someone because of those areas. So we use this process to ensure that we're lowering our risk of someone not being funded through the NOFA process by HUD. And then finally, we worked hard to make this a collaborative process where we are working together, All Chicago and agencies and projects, in order to strengthen the COC. So this is why there's not scoring in the intent to renew, and we do use this as a TA process. But I would say that the local evaluation also is a collaborative process in many ways. So what does this process look like? Again, it's 2 parts. The intent to renew has a certification checklist that I'll go through today, and an initial desk audit, which is the documents you'll be uploading into the system. So this part, again, is not scored. Last year we changed the wording from last year. Last year we said pass versus pass with findings. This year we've modified that language to say you'll see 2 distinctions in your intent to renew. It'll be either no technical assistance needed or technical assistance needed. So we got rid of that kind of language around grading. So if you need a little bit of help, we're going to give it to you. If you don't need any help, then you're going to be good to go. So just a reminder, the local evaluation has an aspect of grant management, project, which is really how you're spending, project performance report, and then we have a personal lived experience section. And this is the scored portion of what we do. I wanted to just at a high level go over the timeline. This timeline will be in the online learning portals for you to download if you would like to. So this is a draft process. We're not sure this is the final timeline, but it should be pretty close to this. Hopefully all of you were aware that in December we released the guidance for the intent to renew. This was the basic information about all of the documents you'll be submitting. Monday we released the intent to renew, and that begins this period. And we're doing trainings this week. And on February 10th is when the intent to renew is due, and that's when All Chicago will start reviewing it. And on March 2nd, we anticipate being able to give everyone their intent to renew feedback report. I prefer feedback report as opposed to report card. And then we'll begin the TA period. We anticipate initial phone calls being or between the 9th and actually I think it's closer to the 16th now. So we want everyone to have a 30-minute check-in call with us. We see that follow-up and revisions will be due from you all around the 27th so that we have time to review your submissions and reach back out to you if you need to in order to have the final feedback reports done by April 15th, which is where we do the recommended versus not recommended to renew. And as you recall, last year everyone was recommended to renew. So we are working towards an April release of the local evaluation instrument with a deadline of May 18th. And then June 1st is when we release the preliminary scorecards, and this is when our long appeals process happens. We will be, the community, the various work groups in the community supported the idea of changing the appeals process and testing something in 2020. So we'll bring that to the board in February, which is why this timeline may shift slightly, because we would like to truncate the appeals process. So we're not doing that until July. I am going to pause now and see if there are any questions. Oh my gosh, you can see my desktop? You sure? I hope not. I don't see any other questions. It looks like you can see the slides though, right? Am I missing something? I don't see anything in the chat. Okay. So everyone can see the PowerPoint, right? Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. There haven't been any questions except for, do you have the PDF? And then again, like I'm kind of on my own here, so I'm not the best at the single technology. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving forward so we can have some extra time. I did want to do one more poll today and see how people are feeling about our friend Survey Gizmo. I'm just going to launch that one right now, just to see people's experience with Survey Gizmo. So you could all take a second to let us know if you've ever submitted the intent to renew via Survey Gizmo. Okay. And I'm going to close it out since we have an overwhelming majority of people who say, I'll give you guys a couple more seconds in case your system is slow. But it does look like the vast majority of you have used Survey Gizmo before. So most of you have used Survey Gizmo before. Great. Those of you who haven't, we do have Those of you who've never used Survey Gizmo before, we do have slides in the online training portal specifically for using Survey Gizmo, so I would encourage you to check that out. That's just a webinar that you can do at any time. You will see some screenshots of Survey Gizmo through this training, but really that's the main venue for education. We did set up Survey Gizmo to be fluid, so nothing's required, so you can go back and forth between questions like last year. So let's get into this intent to renew. So who should submit? Easy. If you had a project that was in existence in 2019 in any way, you should apply for renewal in 2020. If you were a new project under the FY 2018 NOFA and started in 2019, yes, submit a intent to renew for that project. For consolidations, if your consolidation started last year or was in operation, you should apply or renew as a consolidation. I know that everyone's buzzing because the first announcement from the FY 2019 NOFA was released yesterday, and unfortunately they didn't specifically say whether the consolidations happened, so we're advising everyone to just apply as the separate project. So if you applied under last year's NOFA for a consolidation, do the intent to renew as individual projects until we hear from HUD, and they did not inform us in a timely manner. HMIS and coordinated entry SSO projects do not need to complete the intent to renew at this time. I think that's about it. So basically, if you were functioning last year, do it this year. If you were not recommended for funding in FY 2019, do not submit an intent to renew. If you're, for some reason, your agency is not interested in renewing for the FY 2020, please contact All Chicago so we can talk through that. And again, if you weren't recommended for funding in FY 2019 NOFA, you don't need to submit one. If you have any questions about any of this, please reach out to us through the COC programs email, which is the most expedient way to reach us. We do check this daily and assign questions accordingly. So I just, sometimes things get lost in my inbox, and it's just easier through COC programs. So a little bit more on submission information. One of the refinements we made last year was having only one survey per agency. So no matter how many projects you have, if you have one or if you have 15, you only do one submission for the intent to renew. The survey in Survey Gizmo is designed with a lot of conditional logic, and it allows you to add things for however many projects you need to add them to for to have one survey submission. So please do not submit separate surveys for every project. You should be able to do everything in one. Again, things are formatted to give you the ability to upload or answer differently, however many times you need to have different answers. Each upload also allows you to upload multiple sets of files. So you don't have to put everything in one document and upload it if you have 3 different versions. You can do 3 different uploads. We do encourage everyone to use a cover page because that makes it easier for us to understand which projects go with which upload, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Again, our online submission is through Survey Gizmo. We don't accept any paper submissions. So I'm going straight into the substance of the intent to renew. So we do have 3 kind of sections, for lack of a better word. One is the cover page, which is the general information about your agency and your project. The next one is the certification checklist, which is a lot of things that you're just reaffirming you're doing, and some uploads. And then the desk audit is really the uploading of all the documents. So the cover page, which yesterday I realized was the wrong phrase for this, but the cover page is really the information about your agency and the project. So we want your agency name, the contact person. You can put in multiple contact people. You don't have to just pick one. But you do have to designate a primary contact person, the executive director name, and then your project information. So the project information is first of all, the number of projects you're renewing, and then the complete information about each project. And this is really your typical stuff you always give us. It's a way for us to reaffirm that nothing has changed, but some things have, like consolidation. So we do want to ensure we understand all of that new information. So the project name, the HMIS ID. If your HMIS ID is incorrect, please email COC programs right away. The model type that you have, so you'll see both the HMIS, the HUD, and the Chicago model types, and then your grant information, so your start date, your end date, your grant amount, things like that. One new part we've added is the funding source for your housing component. So this is information we would like to have, or we need to have actually, for one of the file uploads regarding occupancy charges and rent charges. So in this, we try to accommodate all possibilities. So funding source by housing component, we mean how do you pay for the housing? So if you only receive COC funding for this project, you may pick COC rental assistance or COC leasing. If you work with the CHA for the housing component, you're going to pick CHA. If you work for the Low Income Housing Trust, you're going to pick the trust fund. So, and you're doing this for each project, so you'll be able to pick the right thing for each project. If you're doing transitional housing, you may just be picking COC operating. So there should be options for whatever you're doing. There is an other category in case we missed something. So hopefully that will be clear in Survey Gizmo. We also ask if you're interested in consolidating. We are, this is something we are encouraging just because it does make things easier. We've heard that HUD is only doing consolidations through the NOFA process. And then there are some questions about major changes. So if there's some major change that's occurring regarding your project that you think we should be aware of that may affect funding or something, or your ability to execute it, we would like to know that. And then we have you certify for all of your projects. One thing I didn't mention before I got into the Survey Gizmo is that hopefully you all noticed in the email that there's really two links in that email. One is the link to the survey in Survey Gizmo itself, and the other link is the login information. So we worked hard to pre-populate a lot of things for you all. So you need to log in with your specific agency and password information. So there should be it's a link in the email or on the COC website that you can see what your login information is. I'm going to pause there to see if there's any additional questions, which it doesn't look like there are. I'm going to check again. Okay, no. Some good humor about Survey Gizmo. I was like that. I'm sure there's nothing in the chat box. Does not look like there is. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So we're going to jump right in to the certification checklist, which is very similar to last year. So we tried to make things easy, like we mentioned, and a lot easier and less things to submit than last year. So the certification checklist does start with this financial criteria, and one of the things is HUD monitoring findings. So you will see that question 1 says, were you monitored in 2017, 2018, and 2019? So this is not the evaluation committee trying to be redundant. We just want to make sure that everyone's findings were resolved. So that's why we're asking for 3 years. So if you had a monitoring visit in any of these 3 years, you should check yes. If you check yes, you'll see questions 2 and 3. If you check no, you will not see questions 2 and 3. So, you know, 2 asks, were there any findings, yes or no, and then have they been resolved? So we just want to make sure that all of your findings, even back to 2017, have been resolved. So, you know, there's been a lot of changes in the local HUD office. We want to make sure things are moving forward, because sometimes open findings can be a reason that HUD finds the project to be risky or a grantee to be risky. We want to absolve that risk. And we did find last year that we did help some projects get their findings resolved more quickly because of this process. So we're not trying to ask for duplicate information for those of you who were monitored in 2017. We just want to make sure that everything's getting closed out effectively and there's nothing open. So moving on with this, the next question is about your fiscal year. So this just helps us understand your financial statements that you are providing. So the general question is, have you had an audit completed within 9 months of the end of your last fiscal year? If you haven't, explain why. This comes to our first attachment, which is the annual audit statement. So you need to attach your most completed audited financial statement, which leads us to the next one, which is single audit. Most of the providers we have do a single audit because of their size, but some of you may not do a single audit. So we want to know, do you do a single audit? And if you do, to put that report in, upload that report. And if you don't, you should have some sort of management letter that states why you're not required to undergo a single audit. The next question is about match. This is again just reconfirming that you do have a sufficient match for the grant, which is a minimum of 25% of your grant request. Okay, I'm going to pause again. I don't think there's any more questions, but I'm just going to check it out. It's good. I don't see anything in the chat box. It's good. Okay. Moving right along. We're going to keep going. And so now we're getting into the programmatic criteria, which is the second section. So first of all, this is a good point for me to pause and say, one of the pieces of feedback we had last year was that people did not want to have a separate instruction manual and form. So what we did this year is we've combined those. So you will see on the All Chicago website that there is one PDF which gives the form and all the instructions in a paper form. And then when you go into Survey Gizmo, you're going to see that all of the instructions are also in Survey Gizmo. So it may seem that Survey Gizmo is really long this year, but you can read all the instructions as you go. So this question, number 8, is a great example of that, because when for this question we do list out all of the ways that an agency participates in coordinate entries. You can read those and determine whether you're a yes, no, or an NA. Actually, this year probably everyone is either going to be a yes or a no, because with the onset of the DV coordinate entry system, everyone is participating, should be participating in coordinate entry now in some level. So going on to the APR. So again, we want to make sure that your APR was submitted on time for every project. And then we want to make sure that things were accepted by the local HUD office. So, accepted by the HUD office, I know this is controversial because they have had some staffing challenges as well. So in order to receive the technical assistance needed, we're really only going to be making sure that we'll only be following up if your APR was either late or rejected. So if your APR says waiting management approval, we're not going to give a notice that you need technical assistance, because we do know that HUD is very laxed about this approval process. Some people haven't had their APR approved with the management signature for 2 years. So as long as you're not late or rejected, you probably won't have any technical assistance needs for your projects in regards to APR. Okay, so moving on to the certification checklist. So again, we released the initial desk audit guidance in December. This shows everything that you will need to submit for the intent to renew. It also shows all of the criteria that All Chicago will be using. So this is really your best guide. I'm going to go through all of these aspects relatively quickly. All this is also in the Survey Gizmo form, but it probably is nice just to have it as a separate paper document as well. So just so people understand kind of the process and how we chose these items on the local evaluation committee. So this is a combination of recommendations from All Chicago, things that we saw through the monitoring process that may have shown some level of inconsistency or some level of inconsistent knowledge of what the regulatory requirements are. Some of them are just the next step in what we've asked for in previous years, and things like that. We do have some aspects that are just informational this year, and I'll talk through that when we get to it. Because we also see this as a process where we can collect what everyone is doing at one time, so we can review and understand what's really kind of the implementation of things are. Again, in this with these items, some of them you may only be attaching one, and some of them you may be attaching multiple ones. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through all of these aspects. So, the first one is the record keeping policy. And if you look in the desk audit guidance, you're going to see that we clearly tell you the criteria. We clearly send you to the right place in the regulations. So basically, this is your agency's policies for keeping program participant records. We do believe this is an agency policy, but it could be that, I don't know for what reason, but you may have different policies for different projects. If you do, just do multiple uploads and let us know what are the projects that are supposed to be included. The second one is the conflict of interest policy. So this is ensuring that you have the right written policy and that disclosures are in place. We do acknowledge that this is part of your HUD renewal application, that you do need to verify that you have the most recent one with HUD, but we did find some challenges with this over the last monitoring period. So we just want to make sure we take a minute to review everyone's policy. So you're going to upload the policy, you're going to upload the conflict of interest disclosure form. This is something usually your board or perhaps your staff are signing. If you don't have it in the disclosure form, we want to understand the frequency that you're having staff and board members sign this disclosure. And if it's not included, we want to ensure that if you don't have the most updated version on the HUD website, that you have a process to do that. So for example, since I've been here, All Chicago's has not shown up on the HUD website. So our process is every year we just re-upload it into eSnaps with the most current version. So that's our process. So if I were completing this, I would write that down as to how I ensure that HUD has the most updated version. Okay, so moving on. So again, we think this is an agency level policy that you should only be submitting one. Attachment F is occupancy charges and rental payments. So this is a big important one. This is why, on the cover page we asked to know what kind of how your housing portion was funded. So for this portion, we need to know your model type, and we need to know the source of that housing component. So what we're looking for in attachments is the formula, the rules, or the template that you use to calculate occupancy or rental payment from participants. This is not rent reasonableness, right? We did that last year. This is the process of how you have participants pay rent or an occupancy charge either to you or a landlord. So we want to see that. We want to see the process you use to reevaluate this. So sometimes that's because income has gone down. Maybe you have something if it goes up. Sometimes we're just doing it annually or when the lease renews. So we want to understand the frequency or the description of how that happens. I mean, this is a point to point out to everyone too, is the evaluation instrument committee was very intentional about language this year. So when you see a process, that is, sorry, my timer is longer than I guess I have a timer on that one. So the process, we were very intentional about language. So the process means we're not expecting you to have a policy. Okay, so you don't have to write a policy and have your board or your leadership approve it. If it says process, we really want you to write down how you do things. So some of us already write down how we do things, but some of us don't, right? So if you don't have it already written down, this is an opportunity for you to just write down that process and tell us what you're doing. That's really all we're interested in. does not say write a policy on how you reevaluate occupancy shows. It says describe the process. So keep that in mind when you're preparing and uploading things. Sometimes we just want to understand, we want you to just write down your process. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it can be as fancy as you want it to be. The third aspect of the attachment for this one is how utility costs are paid for wherever the participant resides. Again, this is a description of how you're doing it and things like that. With this one as well, like we do feel like this may be different for different program model types. So if you have a lot of projects and 2 of your PSH projects are just rental assistance through the COC and 2 of them are through the CHA, like those may be 2 separate uploads for you because you still want to know your process with getting that information from CHA. And then if you have a rapid rehousing project, you may have a 3rd upload because that process may be different as well. So this is one of the few attachments we think that you may have multiple uploads for. Okay, moving on to connection to mainstream benefits. So connection to mainstream benefits is an expectation, right? We expect everyone to connect people to mainstream benefits, but we're also including SOAR. So we don't have as a community have an expectation of having a SOAR worker or utilizing SOAR, but we want to understand how or if people are connecting and utilizing SOAR. So that's the SOAR portion of this question is informational, which means we won't be providing any assigned TA, but we're going to gather what people send to us and we're going to see what the possible TA needs are, or if we need to bring a work group together to discuss how we can improve the SOAR implementation. Okay, so in general, connection to mainstream benefits, this could be SNAP as well, it could be TANF, it could be SSI, SSDI, it could be whatever VA benefits, whatever your participants need. So again, we're looking for a description of the process you use to assess and connect participants to mainstream benefits. That doesn't mean you need a policy. It's one that you describe the process to connect to any benefit. And then if you do have a process for SOAR, a description of that. If you don't have a process for SOAR, you don't have to create one. You could just note we don't have anything, or if you don't have any, we don't see SOAR, we're going to assume you don't do anything, and that's okay. And then if you do have SOAR trained staff, how do you track your outcomes for SOAR? Okay, so we hope that one's not super difficult. So the last 2, H and I, are both informational attachments. So again, we're trying to gather a broad spectrum of what's going on in the COC so that we can create in the community some standards and possible TA for the future. So the first one is about supportive services, and I think last year in the monitoring process and through the client file review, we saw a lot of variety and differences in supportive services, which is why this landed on the intent to renew. So we're looking for your menu of services. That should be pretty easy because I think you all have a menu of services. Again, you may have multiple uploads because your menu may be different based on the different project or the different model or the location in the city. I don't know. And then we're looking for a description of how you document services and assistance provided to participants. Again, a process. You don't have to have it formally written down, but we want you to write it down for this. How do the form you use to log and track referrals? If you don't use a form, just describe your process. So some of you do everything in an electronic database. Great. Describe how that works. We want the description on how you assess the needs of participants at least annually and use that to adjust services. And this is where we're seeing the most differentiation between projects and agencies. And then we want to see the forms you use. So some people are literally using the HMIS form, the form that's the assessment that's in HMIS for annual assessment. Some of you are doing your own more clinical assessments. So we just want to see what you're using. This is not the service plan template. We asked for that last year. We promised we weren't going to ask for the same thing in 2 years in a row. So, we want to see the form. So if you use multiple assessments, just please submit at least one. If it's electronic, we would love to have a blank template. And if it's not possible to go with a blank template, if you could just describe what that assessment looks like for assessing services of participants. And the last one is internal data standards. So that one is from the HMIS team here. So they're really interested in understanding how you all have developed internal data review processes or practices. So again, this is a description of what you're doing today. So we don't expect you to create something completely new. Just write down what you're doing now. And so this is just a narrative section. Then if you have an internal communication plan or practices related to HMIS or other communications within the agency, again, just write down what you're doing now. The last thing, and we worked really hard on the language with this in the local evaluation committee, is the training process for people who are new to your HMIS or other data collection. So how are you onboarding staff who are going to use either HMIS or a comparable database, if that's what you're using. So we don't want to see your entire onboarding process for every staff person. We're just looking for what you do for those using your database. And so this question does apply to everyone. So if you're not using HMIS, you should be using something comparable to track your data. Some of you may have the same process, whether it's HMIS or an internal database or whatever. So hopefully this isn't a huge lift for people. And then the last attachment for this one is the intake assessment. So, okay, and this is really only if you updated it since last year. So we did ask for this in the ITR last year. We're acknowledging that data standards have changed. And because of that change in data standards, some of you may have updated your intake assessment. We would like to see that as part of this evaluation of internal data standards. Okay. We're going a little bit about the cover page. So we did upload a cover page that you can use and update for your own needs in Survey Gizmo. This is a general look at what it looks like. I think it's available on every single attachment. So you can just download it, update it, and add it to the front part of your upload. If you don't have a ton of technology at your agency, what some agencies did last year is they uploaded the cover page first, and then they uploaded the document, and then they uploaded the cover page, and then the document. So just do your best. That's all we're looking for. For labeling, we did give you some advice and some rules that are helpful to us for labeling your attachments. So we asked for the attachment letter, or the agency name, or if you use an acronym, and the HMIS IDs or projects. If one attachment is good for all of them, just put all, right? So if you have 12 projects and you are all using the same process for mainstream benefits, you would say, attachment, I can't remember the letter before on, attachment G, really awesome housing agency, all. So that's how you can do that for the naming convention. Okay, I'm going to pause because I think we have some more questions. Let's see. So yeah, I do want to clarify for the mainstream benefits. So we will give you feedback on the benefits and the process that you connect people to benefits, and we will give you TA on that. But the SOAR portion is the informational portion. So I hope that's clear in the notes. But there's a comment that I'm not sure I'm understanding. But and then someone asked, can you explain the communication plan and what that means? So I mean, this is really, so one of the things I think we're finding in general, but specifically related to HMIS, is how things are communicated internally. So it is do you have a communication plan? So when your ATA, for example, goes to an ATA meeting and receives new information, how is that information communicated throughout the agency? Do you have a huddle meeting and like the ATA and the program directors are there and they are telling you what's going on? Or is it like if there's, we send a lot of emails, so if like someone gets an email communication regarding a change to coordinate entry related to HMIS, how do you communicate that to the rest of the agency? So it's really just a general, like, do you have a communication plan or practices to inform each other, especially those who aren't entering into HMIS, like of changes that could affect what they're doing, how they're doing business. I hope that answers that question. Just going to pause for a minute to see if there are other questions, and if those were sufficient answers to the questions that were asked. We're doing good on time. Okay. If you have questions from a previous section, don't hesitate to add those too, but I'm going to keep moving. So let me just double check the chat box in case somebody used that. Nope, no chat box questions. Okay. All right, moving on. So we're getting to everyone's the next favorite section, HMIS data quality. So the question, again, we're just confirming that every project who needs an HMIS ID has the HMIS ID. Some of you will recall that we had a lot of questions about data quality. So this year, many of you may be aware that there were a lot of challenges with our data quality process that All Chicago was implementing for the system. Because of that, the local evaluation committee and the HMIS team here have determined that we should not have questions about data quality for the intent to renew, and so we removed those from the intent to renew this year. So there are no questions. There will be no technical assistance, but we do anticipate, as we refine the process in 2020, that we are going to include them in 2021. So everyone gets a free pass for data quality this year, and next year hopefully it will be back for us to provide TA and see how everyone's doing. So moving on to the HARTH compliance. So the HARTH Act is the act that sets the regs and everything that we run our projects on. So these are the standard questions that we've been doing for years and years. So the first ones are about confidentiality and ensuring that we're keeping things confidential. You're just reaffirming that all of your projects are still maintaining this. The Lived Experience Commission consulted with us, with the local evaluation committee, on these questions. They're pretty similar to last year, so you are answering the same questions as last year. 18 is still the question about who's the person on your board or other policy-making body, just to give their first name and last initial, or HMIS ID if you're comfortable with that. This is, again, the Lived Experience Commission believes this is proves that you really have this person if they have a name. With the next section, this is all the family project compliance. So we expect any project that has at least one household with one parent and one child under 18 to complete this section. So even if your projects are almost all predominantly singles, but if you have one project that has a parent with a child under 18, you need to answer all these questions. And this is based on the regulations and compliance with HUD. So again, we're getting to the home stretch here. Like, this is the document list. So we did reduce the number of documents from last year. Many of them are like the same ones you've been uploading, so we don't think that's too big of a lift. And as we see, two of them, 2.5, as I like to say, are informational. So if you don't have stuff for those, don't sweat it. But we are going to use that information to try to develop TA and processes in the future. We did want to note that last year, many of you, submitted the same full document over and over again and just highlighted the sections. Our preference really is to have you just tease out the relevant sections. and upload that as your attachment. If it is really easier for you to just highlight what we need, like that's fine, but like it really is easier. It is a little bit nicer to just have the relevant sections in a large document. So we just wanted to like make a little note on that. Going back, I mean, I know we did the naming conventions again, but just as a reminder that, if you have one version for all projects, just put all at the end. You don't have to list 18 HMIS IDs or 7 or however many, just put all. And again, if you have different versions, please indicate the HMIS IDs at the least, or the project names, but HMIS IDs on the cover page and in the file name. So again, the sample of how would you do your upload if you're doing different documents. Okay. The last part of the intent to renew form is scheduling technical assistance. So last year, many of you will recall that we did 30-minute technical assistance calls. We thought the intent to renew is an opportunity for people to be able to save or schedule in advance their session. So you'll see the last question before you sign and submit is you picking 3 days and times for your 30-minute technical assistance call. So we believe that we'll be able to honor at least one of the 3 choices you have. So please put in at least 3 options in, and you'll see the days and the times we're talking about. Then you can also hold that time in your calendar, because we really believe we'll be able to honor at least one of everyone's 30-minute technical assistance calls. So we thought this was a better way of doing it instead of trying to schedule people after we send them their feedback report. So please look out for that and please complete it. Okay, I'm going to pause again. I know there's a lot of pauses for questions, but I just want to make sure people have ample opportunity. I think no new questions, no new chat stuff. Okay. So we're on to the submission portion of our webinar today. So again, make sure you do a final review. One way to do this is to download the PDF of your responses. I would recommend saving that PDF. Make sure all your responses are correct, including your attachments. If you may need to resubmit if you submit early and realize you made a huge mistake, but you may not. So please contact All Chicago and we'll try to figure out the best option for you if you made a mistake and inadvertently submitted too early, or early and then you found a mistake. As a reminder, the confirmation email is sent to the primary contact and the ED. Sometimes you should save this email for your records. Often, or sometimes, depending on how your system works, this can take several minutes. So Survey Gizmo has its awesome parts, but sometimes it's not so awesome in the timeliness aspect. So please be patient. If you don't look in your spam or your junk folder, if you don't have it after 30 minutes, just shoot us an email and we'll send you the confirmation of when you submitted. Just some troubleshooting tips, like what if your document doesn't upload? Usually that's a size limit issue, and so just check the limit and try to reduce it if you can. That's why the idea of just uploading the relevant sections might be helpful. Generally, if you scan something off of the copier, it does make a really large file, so there is a 2 megabyte limit. So if you're getting an error message, that's probably why. How do you do that, right? Did you save it as an image or a text file? If it's too large to upload, you can save it and compress it. Here is a tool that you can use to make a more compressed PDF if you need it. What if you didn't receive a confirmation email? Again, check your junk folder, wait 30 minutes, and if you still have problems, we will resend it to you. Okay, so your submissions are due on February 10th at 4 p.m. That's literally a month from now. We won't accept late submissions. Again, we encourage everyone to submit early to avoid any issues before the deadline. For those of you who have multiple team members working on this, only one staff person can be in the survey at a time. So it does cause problems when two of you are working on it at the same time. So please coordinate with each other. Again, we have one document that is the instructions and the form. Please review that and utilize it. The desk audit guidance we released in December, also very helpful, but the same information is in the final documents. But everything is in Survey Gizmo as well. So if you forget something or you go home and you don't have your paper version, you can at least read it in there. And again, contact us whenever you have any questions. We're happy to help you. We do have FAQs on our website, and we do upload those as more questions arise. So just for a little quick bit about the review portion. So we do review all over 40 submissions for the intent to renew, and then we have an unknown number of attachments. So depending on how many variations of things we have, it gets to be well more than 40. We do reach out to you if we kind of don't understand or if a document is missing for this portion. This is the collaborative portion, so we don't want someone to miss something. We do ask if you could respond as quickly as possible. That's always helpful. And again, our feedback reports are tentatively to be issued on March 2nd. So that feedback report, you're going to see two distinctions. So no technical assistance needed. So that means your document meets expectations. You don't need to make any changes. And if everything has no technical assistance, that's when you move forward to the local evaluation. If you do need it, that means it didn't meet our expectations or the criteria we listed in the instructions. You may need to make changes and resubmit, but often we found that 30-minute call helped resolve some of the things that we found as a need, so that those calls are helpful and important. Anything you resubmit will be re-reviewed and reassessed, and then you are getting your technical assistance. So we hope everybody gets to the no technical assistance needed portion. We do feel this is going to be a lot easier than last year, so hopefully it'll be quicker and less work for all. So again, we will provide TA whenever there's technical assistance needed. This could be individualized TA or it could be cohort TA. So many of you participated in TA through the online training portal last year. That is a venue we're going to utilize again, where there may be samples of other agencies' documents or policies. There may be little PowerPoints or little webinars for you to go through. We found that to be an effective means, and people like being able to do things on their own timetable. What if you can't resolve all of your technical assistance needed aspects before the local evaluation in April? Well, then we just defund you. Just just kidding. Then we keep working with you. We keep giving you technical assistance, and we do say that modifications are necessary and develop a plan around that. This is again a change in the language from last year where we said corrective action plan. So the local evaluation committee decided on modifications necessary as the wording for if you still need some TA. Appeals process. So because this is a collaborative process, we hope there's no need to appeal, but if you find a need for an appeal, please just follow the appeals process in the charter. For monitoring, so based on what happens during this process, some agencies or projects may be chosen for monitoring in 2020. The monitoring work group is finalizing that process and that criteria for this year. And again, All Chicago has promised to not have agencies resubmit documents that they've already submitted for this desk audit. Just as a reminder for those of you who are planning your future lives in the spring, we anticipate the local evaluation to be released in April. This is your scored portion. There's 3 components, which are grant management, or how you're spending your grant, project performance report, and then people who've experienced questions. The local evaluation committee is still working through the questions and the scoring on this, but I think in general we're not anticipating a lot of changes in the content for this year. Training materials. So this webinar will be posted to the website and in the online training portal. We will post all of the documents there. All of the documents for the intent to renew are on the All Chicago website. All Chicago, go to COC, hover over that, and go to COC program competition and scroll down till you find the intent to renew. There is the PDF of the form and the instructions, one document. It's awesome. So I don't know why this is evaluation, but the intent to renew online submission link is there, as well as the information you need for your login, your agency name, and the password. And there's other instructions and resources there as well. Jennifer and I are your primary contacts. As I mentioned before, it is easier for us to manage and make sure we're responding efficiently if you do use COC programs. We're always here 9 to 5, but please just give us a little bit of time to respond to your questions. I'm going to pause again and see if there's any final questions. I think there are. But again, you're welcome to ask questions at a later date. I'm going to check the chat. Okay. So as a reminder, it's due February 10th, 2020. We hope it's easier and less to do than last year. I'm going to put this code in here for the survey. Torlin asked me if I could have you guys do the survey for the training, but I would appreciate it if you did. And I will give people a few minutes to ask more questions if you have any. Let's see, I think we did have one. So the website should be updated except for these slides. Someone asked if the website update now or will it have to be updated later. So everything you need to do right now is on the website. We'll update it with the slide deck and the recording later today. You have to just check with the comms team on that, but all the other documents are already there. Okay. Everybody got my link. Okay, I'll wait another minute or two to see if people have other questions. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Pause. I'm just going to check the website. I had that problem too, that everything on the website was was from 2019, but I thought we updated that. I'm just going to go on and check. Let's we have time. So COC program competition. You got to go down about at least halfway. So it does say 2019 local evaluation, which is probably why we think that's not right. But if you go down to the intent to renew section underneath that, all of the forms and everything are the updated forms. So this is the 2020 desk audit guidance, the instructions, the process overview, which is just more instructions, and then the FAQs. So yeah, sorry, we are redoing our website, so I think we got a little lax with the updates for the current one. Someone asked about when we're going to announce the 2019 awards. Many of you know that HUD did the first announcement yesterday. We're working on an email about that announcement. We should send it out today. So this is the first of 2 announcements. This announcement was only for Tier 1 and the DV bonus projects. And no, I have no idea when HUD will announce Tier 2, unfortunately, because they never tell us. So as soon as we know, we will send that out to the community. So I apologize. It's always a tough place for us to be in because we don't know. I wish we had a better line. I wish we had the bat phone that I could just call HUD and ask them when they're going to let us know, but they don't. Okay, I'll pause one more minute. Again, as soon as we know, you'll know. We're getting an email out today about yesterday's announcement, and we will let everyone know when they announce year two. They did it a little bit differently this year than last year. Last year they did all renewals and then new projects later. So who knows what they're doing. But they just did tier one today, and then hopefully the tier two and other new projects will be announced hopefully soon. Okay. And I'll wait another minute or two to see if people have questions. And then I'm not hearing any. Okay, feels like everyone's good. Thanks everyone for attending. I hope you all have a great day. Again, you'll hear from us as soon as we know about the other awards. Okay, again, CSE programs, if you have any questions, do the survey if you feel like it. Have a great day.